and welcome to VetJobs Salute to Industry Series. My name is Sandy Artman. I'm an Army retiree of 30 years of service. Today I'm joined by Robert or Bob Cantwell of Crane Nuclear. Bob spent 6 years in the Navy as a nuclear power plant operator on the USS Long Beach CGN-9 and 34 years with Crane Nuclear in various roles as a field service engineer, supervisor, project manager, and director. Fun fact about Bob, he has worked in over 36 domestic nuclear power plants and 6 international sites as well in Slovenia, Canada, Mexico, Korea, and the UAE. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
How about telling me a little bit about yourself and your role at Crane Nuclear?
Okay, like you stated, I was in the nuclear power program, went through the training and everything in the Navy. When I was looking to get out, I was hoping to get into a company where I would work more as a tech rep than working in the operations field. So most people that were in the nuclear power industry or through the nuclear power Navy had a choice of either going to maybe a vendor or a company that provided services or go to work at a domestic nuclear power plant. So I had a couple opportunities to go to a domestic nuclear power plant and work in operations and do shift work. But just from being in the Navy, I thought when we would have tech reps on board, they were the experts, I guess, in their field. So whenever we were having problems troubleshooting equipment or whatever, we might have a tech rep come on and work with our feed control system or even the turbine generators. And I thought that was probably a little more interesting, and I wouldn't be working shift work and maybe traveling a little bit more, going to different sites. So my parents had moved to Georgia while I was in the Navy and decided I'd go down. They lived outside of Atlanta. I'd see how that would work out. Went down there, started sending out resumes, and I found out that INPO, which is the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, started just outside of the Atlanta area. And that was because Jimmy Carter was president during the 3 Mile Island accident. So they put INPO just in Smyrna, Georgia, and they have a international office there. In 1986, when Chernobyl happened, they formed WANO. So both INPO and WANO are here in the Atlanta area. So it gives you an opportunity if you work in the nuclear industry. There's quite a few companies that came out of INPO and WANO, both service companies and utility companies. So we also have Southern Company down here. And I just started sending out resumes and got a job at Crane, which was a company called MOVATS, which was Motor Operated Valve Analysis and Test Systems. And we've been acquired by a couple different companies over the years, including Westinghouse. And then in 97, we were acquired by Crane. And they didn't have a diagnostic company, but they were a valve manufacturer. And they had manufactured some of the first nuclear grade valves. And those were used at Shippingport up in Pennsylvania back in 1956. And from that, Crane Nuclear just kind of grew, and we acquired a couple other diagnostic companies.
Great. So you kind of had a windy road that led you to Crane.
Yes.
And you found a home there. So that's interesting. Everybody has their different transition story, if you will, when they get out of the service. It's interesting that you wanted to maintain your nuclear proficiencies or, your skill set in the nuclear field. A lot of people change their skill set. They career pivot when they get out. Others do not. And so you found success. So tell me about Crane, the types of roles, locations, benefits, culture, values. Can you take a few moments and talk to me about Crane?
Sure. So Crane was started in 1855 by Richard Teller Crane.
Wow.
And company was headquartered in the Chicago area. He started the company really as a bell foundry, and then as the Industrial Revolution took off, Crane started to grow and manufactured gate valves and globe valves, and it was really for industrial applications and water treatment. And so a lot of the public works up in Chicago area, they say there's still valves that are over 100 years old that are underground up there that service like sewer and things like that. So
Crazy.
the company started to grow, and they ended up building a pretty large factory up there in Chicago called Chicago Works. And in the 20s, they were flourishing. They started that project and then went into the Depression, and they struggled to make it through the Depression, but were able to keep almost all of their employees employed, and they ended up uh, reducing the hours and everything. And the Chicago Works took off, and they had a huge complex up there. It was at the time state of the art. Raw material was coming in by train through one end of the building and going out as a finished product out the other end of the building. The two sons ended up running the business for a while in early 1900. They created a couple things. The Widows and Orphans Fund, which Richard Teller Crane started, and they fund that organization, and they provide money to the community through some of that. And they have other philanthropic things that the company participates in. It even helps out people who maybe after retirement ran into financial trouble. Crane offers some things to support past employees too. Um, they encourage volunteerism. So actually, last week I volunteered for an activity that was at Kennesaw National Park. It's a national park and not just a state park.
Right.
And they were doing a trail building activity. So a few of us from the office went down and worked on that trail. The company itself is in Kennesaw, the headquarters, but we also have a manufacturing facility in Bolingbrook, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
And all of the valve manufacturing for nuclear plants comes out of there. So we're building a couple plants in Georgia, Vogtle 3 and 4. So we're providing both services and products for the new construction there. And also across the world, there's plants being built in China and the UAE and a few other locations. So we're still providing new valves to new construction, but we also provide replacement parts and new valves if components are wore out and the customer wants to buy maybe an upgraded or a new valve. We'll provide that to them, and then we'll provide the testing of all those components. So they're required to test motor operated valves and air operated valves and check valves just through the NRC. It's mandated. So the sites use us to go in and perform that testing for them on site.
Wow, that's quite in depth um, program that you guys have at Crane. That's very interesting. So
Yeah.
you're involved in basically all the nuclear sites. I mean, do you have competitors, or does Crane pretty much have the lock on the industry?
Well, for motor operated valves, we're the only company that manufactures valves, manufactures test equipment, and then provides the services. There's a couple competitors that either just provide valves or they can provide the diagnostic equipment.
Hmm.
There's really just two vendors in the industry that are in the United States providing diagnostic test equipment. Uh, on the AOV side, there's some companies out there that are manufacturing air operated valves, and they also manufacture air operated valve diagnostic equipment.
Okay.
So um, we're really the only company that's providing both AOV, MOV, and check valves. We build all of those types of valves,
Hmm.
manufacture all those types of valves. We manufacture the test equipment and then provide the engineering services and testing.
So for a transitioning service member or spouse, the longevity prospects of having a solid employment with Crane are very good because
Yes.
you are, as you said, you start your history speaks for itself. Crane's been in business for years.
Yes.
The next question I have is kind of two-part, so bear with me here. Why does your company want to hire military veterans and spouses? Number one. And part two, what does an ideal candidate look like? So as you talk through this, you're probably going to answer both questions at once, but so why does Crane want to hire veterans and spouses? And what does the ideal candidate look like? Skills, qualifications, credentials. What are you looking for?
So one of the reasons that we want prior military experience, especially if they come out of the nuclear power program, what we've found is the training that they get going through the nuclear power program, they have a leg up on everyone else that we're trying to hire because they truly understand nuclear power. And when they get to the plants, although it's slightly different than what they saw while they were at sea, it's the same basic designs. There's Westinghouse and General Electric designs out there, and all the plant systems. They're familiar with the exposure to radiation,
Okay.
things like that. To them, it's not foreign. They understand it. They know it's a low risk environment. And as far as an industrial environment, nuclear is one of the best industries to work in. They really focus on safety. And so I think that military and especially Navy nukes understand that. But then on the other side is the standard, if you're Army or Navy or Air Force, we've taken a few people that were actually aviation mechanics,
Yeah,
and they understand basically mil specs and nuclear specs are very
exactly.
similar. So they understand uh, basically the criteria that we work under and what the expectations are. Communication is really important in the nuclear industry, and we talk about three-way communication, phonetic alphabet. Everyone in the military has been exposed to that type of communication. It doesn't matter what areas they work in. So we've taken electricians, mechanics that come out of the military that have that kind of background and that exposure, and they fit well. And you'll see when you go to the plants, it's amazing how many people at the plants have military background. Majority are Navy, but all branches of service you'll see at the plants, and it's that kind of environment they feel comfortable in. And you'll even hear some terminology that comes from the military, and especially with officers after 20 years or whatever that left the military have moved on to nuclear, and they're in executive level positions there. And I think that the guys coming out of the military, um, I guess, have a better understanding of where those supervisors and managers and stuff have come from, and they've got a common interest. And so I think it does really fit well with military. Maybe someone that's not as accustomed to regimented environment and a strict adherence to policies and procedures, they may have an adjustment period that someone coming out of the military has already gone through that
Hmm.
and has a better understanding of that and why it's in place. We even talk about, error reduction and human performance and trying to minimize human performance errors. And that goes all across the military also with friend and foe identification and, making sure that you have what you're working on and what your task is, that you're confident you're doing the right activity on the right component. And it just seems like a military background and some of the training they have both in electrical areas, mechanical
Yeah.
areas, or aviation and technology that they're exposed to. Our stuff is all computer based, so if they have a level of experience with computer acquisition, it really helps out. And it's their first time going through the training. They're not trying to learn everything about computer interfaces and things like that,
Right.
and they
Right.
have a mechanical or electrical aptitude that helps them in the training.
Right. So that makes total sense. Why you desire to have military veterans work at Crane. We are accustomed, all of us are accustomed to rules and regulations and processes that we follow. Um, do this step before this step, and just we're accustomed to that, following orders, and working in the nuclear industry, I can see where that would be a natural progression or a natural fit.
Yes.
So my next question is what can a candidate expect in the application process, interview process, and is there training? I think there is additional training. So if I'm a Navy nuke and I'm familiar with certain things, I mean, is the training truncated, or how does that work? Can you talk to that a little bit? The application process, training, interview process.
Yes. So what we do, we review resumes when we get them. It doesn't matter what, if they're in the military or non-military,
Mhm.
maybe college graduate, depending on what role they might fill. So what we're able to do is we'll look at a resume and go through, look at the experience level that the individual has through ASME, which is American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They have certain standards, and in order to put a candidate on site for the first time, they have to have 2 years of matching experience or applicable experience in the field. So if we take someone in, put them through our training, which I'll talk a little bit about, they will have the training, then they'll have 2 years of experience. And through our QA program, we can certify them to work in the field. If we take a candidate that has no experience, that perhaps they went to school and took sales and marketing type classes, it's hard for us to place those individuals because they have no mechanical or electrical background. They have no experience in nuclear, and through ASME, we can't certify them. So we put them in the field as apprentices. So what we'll do is we'll bring all the candidates in. We'll put them through our basic training, which is usually like a valve or actuator class, where they'll learn about the valves and actuators that they're going to see in the nuclear power plant. And then we put them through an evaluation process after the class. They'll take an exam and then go through a hands-on evaluation process. And with the background that they have, we can usually go through and certify them through our QA program to work at the power plant. The one nice thing about military guys too is that they're used to traveling. So,
Okay.
some people, maybe they grew up in Georgia, have always lived in Georgia, so this will be their first experience traveling. With military, of course, they've left, gone to boot camp, and they've gone through the adjustment and probably been stationed someplace either in the United States or overseas. So that piece of the travel, they're a little more used to or accustomed to.
That's a good point you bring up on travel. I don't mean to interject, but
Yeah,
we haven't talked about that, but you alluded to it. So in this role, it's not all in Kennesaw. It is you travel to various nuclear sites around the U.S. and the world, even, correct?
correct. So typically, what we'll do, because there's 93 sites in the United States, actually 93 reactors. There's not 93 sites in the United States that are operating. Some of them have 2 or 3 reactors on site. So that goes from the West Coast all through the central United States and to the East Coast. So we'll typically talk to a candidate once they go through the training, and then decide maybe they want to stay in the Southeast, maybe they live in Tennessee, and we do work with Tennessee Valley Authority, with Southern Nuclear, Florida Power and Light, Entergy throughout the Southeast. Um, and so we'll kind of work with the candidates and maybe see what area they would prefer to work in. Maybe they want to work overseas, but typically we'll put them in a site in the United States first, see how they perform. And then as time goes on, we actually start, and as they want to move up through the organization, we give them more advanced training. And after learning all about the valves and actuators, they'll learn about the diagnostic equipment that we manufacture, the installation of the equipment, and then the analysis of the data.
Okay. So training You've talked quite a bit about that. We've got a few minutes more, but let's talk about the training. So, how long is the training, and is it paid training uh, as well?
So what we do for the training, and we have a few things that are going on with Crane. We're actually doing uh, a long, I believe it's a 6 week course right now, where we're bringing people in through the valve program and getting them some real hands-on and working uh, on actual valves down in the classroom area. And we're actually building out that area to enlarge our training facility. So the typical candidate, when they come in, they'll usually come in for just a 1 week basic class, learn the basics, and do the evaluations, and we'll send them out to the field. But as their experience increases and they get accustomed to it, and it's something that they want to do, we'll end up giving them the more advanced classes. When they come in here, we pay per diem for their days that they're here, but we don't pay them for the training itself. We sell the classes for anywhere to customers from $3,000 to $5,000 for a week of training, depending on what class they're attending. So we're giving that to the candidate, but we are paying for a living expense while they're here, and then they'll work with our HR department and staffing, and we'll try to place them on a job, where they'd prefer to go after the training's complete. Most of our work occurs in the spring and in the fall. Uh, we end up supporting some work through the year round, like at new construction down at Vogel. We have some work going on in Canada where they're um, actually going through and refitting some reactors up there near it's both Pickering and Darlington near Ontario, Canada. We did a project up further north, the Bruce plant, where we've kept candidates on site for a longer period of time. I'm going to be going over to the UAE again at the end of the month, and I'll be working there through October, so about 3 months in the UAE. So all the around the world, all the plants shut down usually when temperatures are moderate and demand is low, and they want to be up and running during the highest peaks. So right now, when temperatures are pretty high, everyone's running their air conditioning. They want to keep the nuke plants online and
Sure.
providing power. So that's what they'll do. They'll come in, go through training. We'll work with them on placement, where they would like to go, and what suits our needs also, and usually give them a couple choices on maybe where they'd like to work, and then we usually pay them a pretty good wage where. That's not what they would make if they were working full time, but we understand because of the brief assignments that we're going to have to compensate them a little bit more than they would have for a typical job around home, so that they find this attractive to go out and support these outages.
So, as I understand it, the training you pay per diem and lodging, or whatever
Right,
you want to phrase it, for training, which could be up to 6 weeks. But
right,
you don't pay a salary during the training, so you're
right,
covering costs of lodging and food, I guess,
right,
um, but not a salary. Okay,
right.
well that's interesting, and that's all done in Kennesaw, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and then when I go to a job site, I mean, you said the pay is increased to make it palatable for the individual because I'm not working full time year round. I'm working for maybe 3 to 6 months at a certain site. Now, do they get per diem while they're at the site, or how's that
yeah.
work?
So what they'll do is they'll get paid travel to the site, and then travel back when they leave the site. We can do that either if they want to drive in their personal vehicle, they can get paid that way, or if they want to fly, and in some cases they have to fly, of course, if it's going overseas. So we'll pay the transportation, and while they're on site, they will get per diem, which will be paid 7 days a week. And on top of that, they'll also get the hourly wage. And typically, we're working 72 hours. So it's 6 12-hour days. The NRC
Wow.
won't allow us to work more than 72 hours just to make sure that people are well rested and able to think and less prone to human error.
Hmm.
But that working those 72-hour weeks also helps with the compensation. And depending on the sites we're working at, it's either time and a half or on weekends, it's sometimes double time. So they'll make a pretty good salary where they're living off of their per diem while they're on site, and then just either
Yeah.
sending checks home or uh, you know saving that money
Hmm.
for after the outage.
Okay. And these outages, are they, is there a typical time frame for those? 3 months, 2 months?
Typically, right now in the United States, the outage will last 30 days. And there's usually a week or two on the front end where they go in and do their training. So, for some of the experienced candidates, they'll be there 45 to 60 days. For newer people with less experience, it may be around 30 days.
And then they go to another site
And then we try
immediately,
to, yeah.
or
So
do
we'll
they have
lay
a
that
week
out
downtime
where,
or what?
yeah, we'll lay it out where um, we hope to put them in up to 3 outages in a season. So
Okay.
hopefully, like TVA, the way they'll work their outages because they have multiple sites, they'll try to put all their resources at one site. As that outage is winding down, we'll mobilize our resources. Now they have their training done and they're ready to go to the next site and work that site. TVA has 3 nuclear sites right now that are up and running: Watts Bar, Sequoia, and Browns Ferry, and they just made transition from Browns Ferry to Sequoia to Watts Bar. Southern Company is similar. They have Vogel with 2 sites under construction there, 2 reactors under construction there. Uh, then they have Farley and they have Hatch, and they'll do the same thing. So we might take people from Hatch to Farley. It just kind of depends
Okay.
on what the refuel cycle is. They're typically on 18-month refuel cycles.
Okay. So it really, for candidates that are watching this, this is not necessarily a 12-month employment. You're going in 3 to 6 months at a time to various sites, and if I heard you correctly, you're off during the winter, the high periods, winter and summer. You're off, or is there other work they can do? Because somebody
Uh,
may want to work.
yeah, typically they're off, but there is other work that we do. Like we do support some of the testing up in Bolingbrook. There's other plants either that are under construction and want people there year round. There's some things that we offer during our down periods. The other
Okay.
thing, they have pre-outage planning. We're looking at parts. We're looking at schedule. Um, we're looking at work windows and trying to work that out and levelize the workload. So we have people working during the summer months, but they're usually in a supervisory position, and we try to get the people as much work as we can during the outage season because we know if if we're not providing them with enough income, they're not going to want to stay in the industry just
Exactly.
supporting the outages like that. So some people enjoy the time off, whether it's snow skiing in the winter or if it's fishing and hunting or whatever your activities might be. Some people really enjoy that. We do hire full time also, um, but the number of resources that we hire full time are usually limited. But the other thing that happens is after a candidate has worked with us for a couple of years and we see the opportunity and their skill set and how they're doing in the field, we bring them in and hire them full time. So there's opportunities both even in the beginning when we're looking to fill, whether it's an engineering role, both in product development or areas like that. Um, we have hired people, in full time. Last
Yeah.
year, we hired 4 engineers out of a local college to come in and work with us also. But
That's a nice segue into my last question about the future of your company and growth and expansion potential. So you just alluded to that. Hey, I worked for you for a year, 2 years, or whatever the case may be, and you really like my skill set. So then you bring me in and you offer me full time employment. Now, the full time employment, is that still traveling or is that in Kennesaw? I mean,
yeah,
you're in Kennesaw, but you travel. You're going to UAE for
yes,
3 years. So it sounds like you guys all travel.
yes. So we do have a couple people that work in the office, both in our calibration lab, which we have actually quite a few people that have come through the calibration lab and worked in a calibration lab that had a military background also. What they're doing is taking instruments and doing the calibration on those instruments and then sending them back uh, to the utility. Because we're manufacturing some of that equipment right here, we have people that are working full time in the cal lab, both manufacturing and calibrating equipment, either our own for the rental pool or to send that equipment back to the customer, and they just keep it on site and use it as they need to test MOVs, AOVs, and check valves. The engineering department, we write our own software, so all of our acquisition equipment, we've actually designed and created that software in house. Um, then the mechanical and electrical pieces of the test equipment, we're always trying to innovate and make new test equipment simpler, easier, smaller to use. Um, but most of the people that work out of this office are traveling to the different
Okay.
sites around the world.
Yeah, I said when I first ran across your company and was talking to your team, had I been a younger guy, I was not a nuclear person in the Navy. I was Army, but the job is intriguing in that, hey, I can go here for 3 months and take a knee if I want, and then do another job, or I can, just go as crazy as I can and then take a few months off, and it's a
Yeah.
nomadic style of
Right.
life,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people that prefer that. And
Right.
so, had I not been married and had I be younger, and, I probably would have done something similar. So, yeah,
Yeah. The
very interesting.
interesting thing, and I know that, one thing they talk to us about in the Navy is, when you uh, put stress on someone, if you're going to affect their pay, if you're going to move or change their marital situation, those can be the most stressful times. And that's really, we're asking people to travel and we are affecting your pay, but
Yeah.
we try to make that as smooth and easy as possible so that it doesn't impact you. And that's one reason I think that the military guys do well in our organization is it's something that they're used to and they're used to the travel, and it certainly doesn't get old because you're not sitting behind a desk for 10 or 20 years or whatever in
Exactly.
your job that I've worked for hundreds of supervisors and managers over the years, both in the United States and overseas, and it's pretty interesting, and you learn a lot of valuable lessons on what makes a good manager and what makes a bad manager just through your experiences with so many different people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, Bob, this is about all I had. Is there anything else that you would like to add about Crane before we finish up for the day?
No, I would say one other thing, I guess, about Crane is because they've grown so much since the 30s, and when World War II started, Crane had a big industrial manufacturing capability. So they really spread out and started to diversify. So they're cranes in aerospace, they're in engineered materials, and then fluid handling. They just split off the payment solutions, but Crane as a whole is a large company. They used to be Fortune 500, but they're still pretty far up there and a good company to work for. And there is opportunity once you're in Crane. Other people have moved on to other parts of the organization outside of both the nuclear part of fluid handling into other parts of fluid handling that covers wastewater and manufacturing for all sorts of non-nuclear grade valves. And then in the aerospace industry, Crane is really big in aerospace and kind of started on anti-lock brakes. And I think at one point they provided more than 60% of the anti-lock brakes on aircraft. They
Wow.
they actually, in the Apollo 13 movie, when the box that's circulating the air, they go through and try to put in the charcoal filters to try to get the air back in a capsule, I guess, purified. It was actually a Crane pump that was used, and there's literature and history on that you can read about some of the Crane history. So they're a diversified company, and there's a lot of opportunities at Crane outside of nuclear.
Well, that speaks volumes to Crane's longevity and the future of Crane. I mean, when you think of aerospace, wastewater, the valves, just other things other than nuclear, right? So,
Right.
I mean, Crane is here for the future. Now, where is corporate? Is it also in Kennesaw or is it elsewhere?
It's in Stamford, Connecticut, and then we
So
have
it's that
offices all
Crane.
over the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
I was wondering if it was associated with the Crane out of Connecticut. I knew Crane, but I didn't know if Crane Nuclear was separate or part of
Yeah.
that. So you're part of
Crane Co.
Yeah, Crane Co. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Well, thanks, Bob. I appreciate your time today, and I hope all the candidates that watch this find value in it. I'm sure they will. We'll hang this up on our website, and we'll put it out through social media. We'll also send you a copy. I appreciate your time, and thank you for what you do. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to helping Crane hire more military veterans and spouses.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.